I turned my annual income into my monthly income. In 11 months, I turned $40,000, which was the most I've ever earned, into $750,000 in 11 months. I went from having a blood test that said I was really sick and a doctor that said you're probably going to have this for the rest of your life to completely being healthy again. Nothing worked in my life and everything changed so fast because I started learning to work with a higher power. You can call it God, the law, the universe, call it whatever you want, spirit, call it whatever you want. Call it something that matches your spiritual religious persuasion that feels good to you. Feeling is the secret, so just make sure it feels good to you. There's a reason why clients in our coaching programs achieve the quantum leaps they do, because what we teach is based on essence, universal principles, and law, then the laws of the mind, then skill set, then tool set. We work on all levels. And so, of course, success is guaranteed. I see so many mentors and coaches and gurus out there. They just teach on one of these levels. They teach a lot of strategy or something they haven't even integrated themselves. And in my opinion, how dare they? That's fraudulent. That is so bad, in my opinion. When you apply these, understand you're working with the main cause backed of results in your life. This was a topic that I believe last week or a week prior in our community started talking about. Somebody asked some questions around one of these laws, and I figured, why not just do a whole video around all 7 primary laws of the universe, and that will, I hope, help you as much as possible on your journey going forward. So we know that the whole universe works by law. Like Earl Nightingale, Bob's mentor, said, even dust and feathers move by law and not by luck. Many of us became aware of the law of attraction when we saw the movie The Secret or read the book The Secret. And it was as if the law of attraction was just invented. All of a sudden, a lot of people talked about it, but it's always been here. In fact, some of the materials that you and I will study together today, they have their origins with the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Greeks. And so this awareness has been here all throughout history, is sort of just been passed along, you can say, and in certain decades or centuries, it's been more common to talk about than in others. And so if one invention was made, let's say the iPhone, we'll never become unaware of it again, right? We're going to keep building on. Now we have the iPhone 14, 15, next time it's going to be the 16th, whatever. But we never regress. We never go back and install the operating system for an iPhone 1, right? But it's interesting with these laws because even if 500 million people were impacted by The Secret, and they were, we sort of stopped talking about it again. We sort of regress backwards, don't we? It's interesting. When it comes to the laws of the mind and the laws of our being, it's being reinvented every now and then. And yet we forget about it. And then somebody else comes along, does a video or, something else. And all of a sudden we start talking about it again. Why aren't we not focused on these laws continuously, with it being top of mind in our life and in our business? Why is that? Why do you think it is so? I watched The Secret, like many of you have. Bob Proctor was in it. He talked about these concepts in a way that I'd never heard about anybody talk about this before. Then he talked about a book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And apparently he had outlined these 7 laws. So I started studying The Science of Getting Rich and Wallace Wattles and the 7 laws in that book. But I kept wondering, where did he get these from? Did he just invent them on a Sunday? I don't think so. But where did they come from? And I'm not even sure Bob ever expressed, I'm not sure if he was aware of where they actually came from besides Wattles. He always referred back to Wallace Wattles. And then I brought this up with a magic mentor of mine, Jeff McBride, incredible human being, just love him to death. He's just amazing human being, very big in alchemy, very big in magic, very big in mental transmutation, which this really is. So I talked to him about these laws and he said, well, that's from the Kabbalion. And I said, what? That's from the Emerald Tablet. That goes way back to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians. And I'm like, okay, all right then. So there's a lineage here. There's a trajectory here. So no wonder the Egyptians could build what they built. No wonder that the Greeks did what they did. That wasn't accident. They were aware of these laws. All right. So the more I became aware of that, the more passionate I became, it reignited my passion to study these things and not just study them. You see, you can talk about this, you can read about this until the moon drops down from the sky. But until you actually apply it, nothing is going to shift. And there's people that I call them personal development junkies. They buy books and books and books and books and books. They watch videos, videos, videos. They retain the information, and they do nothing with it. Make sure you're not a shelf help, you understand it, you put it on the shelf. Make sure you're not just somebody who's gathering the information. We're going to go through all 7 primary laws today, but make a conscious decision to apply at least one of them in your life. And you'll start to see how things shift. There's one in particular that will help you in your life and in your business, in all areas of life. That is the one I focused on the most in the beginning of my journey. It changed everything. So we'll come back to that. All right. We'll go through all 7. I'll detail them, I'll outline them for you, and we'll go through them one by one based on the Kabbalion and the original principles. Why should we get familiar with these principles? Because they govern everything in your life. That's why. It controls everything. And it also places responsibilities square in our lap. We can't run from that anymore. We can't place responsibility outside. So that's scary for a lot of people. Many people are not willing to take full and complete responsibility. It's not the environment, it's not the economy, it's not the parents, it's not the past. It has nothing to do with your future unless you accept it. If you accept the idea that something from your past is controlling you now, congratulations, you'll get more of it. But if you take full and complete responsibility, learn to work with these laws, everything starts to shift. So it can literally cost you your dream by not working with this. My whole life, I worked against them. Like I said before, we are programmed. You and I are genetically and environmentally programmed through our DNA, and that programming is reinforced in our early upbringing to actually work against these laws. And one of them is the law of cause and effect. We'll talk about it, but we're programmed to chase the effect. If you and I just chased the main cause, the effect will take care of itself, but we're not. We're not. When you look at most people's behavior, it is so clear that they don't understand this at all. They may understand it on an intellectual level, but that's not learning. We haven't learned any darn thing until we take the concept intellectually, integrate it subjectively, act on it physically, and the feedback in the change in the results, the feedback from the change in results to your senses is learning. So let's establish that first. You're not learning anything here. You're receiving some information, but you're learning as you're applying it. Then you're building awareness around it. So let's take a look here. I'll share my screen. Beautiful. So we're going to go through them one by one. Let me read to you a little excerpt here. These teachings really constituted the basic principles of the art of Hermetic alchemy. Hermeticism was a belief system developed by Hermes Trismegistus, and he was an ancient alchemist. And we thought that alchemy was about transmuting lead into gold, but it wasn't. The ancient alchemists, they worked with mental transmutation. In other words, manifestation. What we're doing here, we're just doing it. We just call it something different, right? We can stick a different label on it, but it's the same thing. We call it real magic in our community, the ability to control energy between spirit and form with and through you. So it's the same thing. It's just different words, I guess, put to it. These teachings really constituted the basic principles of the art of Hermetic alchemy, mental transmutation, which, contrary to the general belief, dealt in the mastery of mental forces rather than material elements. The transmutation of one kind of mental vibrations into others, instead of the changing of one kind of metal into another. So we have to understand that the physical world that we experience through our senses are expressed effects of mental invisible causes. And so instead of dealing in a world of effects, of symptoms, we're now learning to go to the main cause. Once and for all, the body is an expression of the mind. Everything that the body does is an expression of a mental force within you. Everything is already here, if not in one state, then in another. And that is the first of the 7 Hermetic principles. It's a mental universe that corresponds to our thinking. The first law, we call it the perpetual transmutation of energy. Energy moves from an invisible state into physical form back into an invisible state, like a tree. It's a beautiful expression of that cycle, right? Um, the Kabbalion Hermeticism talked about that first principle as the principle of mentalism. The principles of truth are seven. He who knows these understandingly possesses the key, the magic key, before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. So, in other words, you have at your disposal principles that will help you turn no thing into something with and through you effortlessly. That is the key to the magic kingdom here. It sounds like a lot, it sounds like just words, but I must conclude in my own life that the results I've created are so far and above and so far fetched from where I thought I could be in my life. But it's not harder. It's not because I worked harder. It was because I aligned myself with these teachings. So the first one is mental transmutation. Transmutation of energy. You can call it, like the Kabbalion says, mentalism, the principle of mentalism. It's a mental universe, and the universe corresponds to your ruling mental state. You could call the perpetual transmutation of energy the law of supply. Everything is here. If it's not in one state, then it's in the other. You call it into your life by your ruling mental state. And so everything comes from one source. It can come from many different angles, but it comes from one source, same source. This is the same source you and I draw upon. And that's what Waddles talked about in The Science of Getting Rich. When we're talking about abundance, we're not just talking about money, we're talking about a rich and abundant life. How more of what we desire is being expressed in our life with and through us. So your source of supply is not outside of you. Your resources are not outside, they're inside. They're in your ability to connect with that source of supply. So that's the first principle, is that we stop seeking resources outside of ourselves. We're a creative being. We can connect with invisible eternal intelligence within us and download ideas, resources, everything that we need to cause that idea to move into form. Because you see a lot of ignorant people in the world now, their security stands and falls with the stock market, with the economy, with the value of their home, with whatever else is outside. They are so ignorant in terms of their true nature and where abundance actually comes from that they lose out on life. And all the great teachers throughout history have taught us this. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the most beautiful books in Hindu tradition, tells us this. The Bible tells us this. The Quran tells us this. All great books tells us the same thing in different contexts. But the source of supply is within ourselves, not outside. So the next principle, the Kabbalion actually talks about it as the principle of correspondence. Wallace Wattles talked about it as the law of relativity. That's the term we use as well in our programs. The principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above. You can't have something until you relate it to something else. So we'll just call it relativity here for simplicity. Relativity. It should say relativity. So how often have you heard yourself say that's a lot, or that's a little, or that's really expensive, or that's really cheap? The truth is, it's neither. Everything is relative to something else. Here, voila, is a coin. You say, well, maybe that has a high value, or maybe it doesn't. Well, compared to this, what's the value then? You see, nothing is anything until we compare it to something else. So, a good principle to remind yourself of is to change your inner dialogue every time you have a tendency to put a label on something. Follow up with in relation to what? So the principle of correspondence, or the principle of relativity, this principle embodies the truth that there's always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. Yeah, we could take a deep dive into the rabbit hole here, but let's keep it at somewhat of a high level so we don't lose people, because I've found that if you go too deep too soon, it goes right over our head, right? And we're on to the next video and the next video and the next video. And we're not learning anything. So let's keep it at a relatively, see what I did there? Relatively high level, So that's a good word to insert in your vocabulary going forward. It's relatively cheap. It's relatively expensive. It's relatively much, or it's relatively a little. Then you remind yourself that it's neither actually until you relate it to something else. I remember when I first moved here to the US, and I was reflecting on this morning. I rented an apartment on Florida Avenue here in Miami, and it was $1,000 a month. And I thought that was a lot of money. From a guy that performed with magic for tips in the beginning, that was a lot of money, you know? And there were months I couldn't pay rent, and it was not a great situation. But for my past version of me, $1,000 a month was a lot. Now, if somebody had told me that years later I was going to purchase a home that is now worth several $1,000,000, which my real estate agent just said the other day, have you seen the value has gone up? I'm like, okay, great. But I realized it's just relative. It's neither nor a lot nor a little. It just is. But I'm now living across the street from the old apartment. Where I live now was just a parking lot. They built this new luxury development. And back then, in that little apartment on Florida Avenue, where I paid $1,000 a month for a crappy little studio apartment with a bed would fold out from the wall, I dreamt of a day where I could see the ocean. The only thing I could see back then was the parking lot, was into a wall of a parking lot. And I reflected on it this morning. But the truth is, a multi-million-dollar apartment is just it's just a number. Compared to a penthouse across the street that's $15 million, it's a little. Compared to a little one-bedroom apartment that costs $1,000 a month, it's a lot. Do you see what I mean? And I'm not saying this to say, oh, that's really well done, Anders. It's just a reflection I had on my own journey this morning. But I know I'm just getting started. I know that this is just relative to something even greater. And it's not about the number, and it's not about the size, and but it's about the growth that you are experiencing on this plane called physical life. And so that's why this is so important. Never fall prey again to the idea that something is this or that. Everything is just relative to something else. So cement the idea nothing is this or that until you make it something out of it. Related to something else. Most people use the law of relativity against themselves. They look at somebody that's further ahead and they relate themselves to somebody that's further ahead. That's a dumb game. That's really dumb. That's stupid. That's silly. You're ignorant then. You're working against the law. Use the law of relativity to your own benefit, for your own benefit, by relating yourself to somebody that's not as far as you. And it's not about judging them. It's not about looking down on them. You have no right to do that. But that's going to make you feel better about you. If I back then, instead of saying, oh, that's a lot of $1,000 for an apartment, it's a lot every month. If I had related myself to somebody that was homeless, I would be very grateful for the situation I was in. See what I mean? We always relate ourselves to somebody that's further ahead. That makes ourselves feel bad. That's silly. That's a dumb game, like I said. Let's move on. This is the good one. This is really good. This is where we dial in and dial up. The third one is the law of vibration, or the principle of vibration, which attraction is a secondary causation of. So let's not say I'm working with the law of attraction. You can't. It's a secondary law. You can only attract to you what you're vibrating with. So let's make sure we get that straight and we work with the law of vibration, okay? The principle of vibration: nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest. Facts which modern science endorses and which each new scientific discovery tends to verify. Yes, the more we study quantum physics, the more we realize that this is in fact how it is. Nothing rests. Everything is in a constant state of motion. How can you plant an acorn in the earth? And how is it that that acorn can only grow into an oak tree? It can only do that because the acorn has a pattern plan in it. We're calling it an acorn, like Bob Proctor always would say, because that's the vibration it's on. That's why it has the shape and size of an acorn. That's why we call it an acorn. That acorn, by law, can only become an oak tree. It does not grow into roses by an accident. It has a vibrational plan in it so that when you're planting that acorn in the earth, it attracts to it all the particles that's a match to it. And it can only become an oak tree. You and I, on the other hand, are creative beings. We are given God-given creative faculties. We're created in the image of our creator, which is creation. So we're here to create. Hopefully we can agree on that. Regardless of your spiritual and religious, persuasion, adherence, we are creative in nature, and you and I can actually cause our bodies to vibrate at a different rate. We can cause ourselves to attract completely different things into our life. And you can do this so accurately and so specifically that you shock yourself. And that's my hope for you. But how do we do that? We do that by creating clear mental images. Now, see, we're back to this concept. You cannot separate them. These are like, they fit together like colors in a rainbow. So you're back to transmutation of mental energy. How do we do that? We use one of our mental tools called imagination. It's the most beautiful nation in the world. You can go anywhere in your imagination. Then you hold on to that image, that picture with your willpower. Your willpower gives you the ability to focus. When you do that, you change the way you feel. And the way you feel, actually, the word feeling is the word we use to describe our conscious awareness of the vibration that we're in. So when I say I feel really good today, I pride myself with gratitude, I feel wonderful, I'm in a high vibration. I'm a vibrational match with more of what I desire. Now back to Wallace Wattles, back to his school of thought on the laws. He said that the entire process of mental adjustment and attunement can be summed up in one word: gratitude. So what precedes gratitude? A mental image held with focus triggers a feeling. Feeling is the conscious awareness of vibration. Now you feel differently about something. And what's that feeling going to do? It's going to cause you to attract what's a corresponding match to that image. Time and space are illusions. If you have to attract somebody from the other side of the planet to you, you will. How could I, as a broke, sick, unhappy individual with an eviction notice on my door, sit down and say, I'm going to work with the best in the world in personal development? How could I just build that picture and hold on to it? Well, I could, because I had learned something about my mental tools. And I did that consistently every day, multiple times a day for a few months. My intuition started to guide me. You see, that's where all these laws work together and where the mental tools work together. And I went to a specific place in Las Vegas on a very specific time because my intuition guided me. And I ran into Bob Proctor. We ran into each other on a busy casino floor, thousands of people around us, New Year's Eve. What are the odds? What are the odds that was going to happen? Did I use my intellect? No, I used an intelligence. I used a law that is so much stronger, so much bigger than our puny, tiny little intellect. Where do most people go to create better results? They go to their intellect. They try and calculate it out. That's not working with the law. That's impeding your own progress. One person working with the law is always in the majority. You have a power that is so much bigger working for you now when you use the law of vibration. And how we do that? How do we do that? We do that with gratitude. Gratitude hooks you up to your source of supply. But most people, they don't do this purposely, consciously towards a direction. They're like this, ping pong balls all over the place. Their energy is not directed towards a purpose. Disconnect from the evidence of the senses and use the truth. Fact is, my fact was I was broke, sick, unhappy, buried in debt, and an eviction notice on my door. That was fact. That was a physical fact. I recognized it with my senses, but I did not let that affect my emotional state. I controlled my emotional state with the law. That's where miracles begin. We can make full use of the universe around us by applying just one of these. Just make the commitment today. Take one of these principles and apply them. Don't try and apply all of it. Then nothing is going to happen. It just becomes confusion. So let's move on and let's focus on the next one, the law of polarity. The law of polarity, or the principle of polarity. The Kabbalion states it this way: everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. So what does that mean? That's a big mouthful. That means that nothing in this world can exist without two sides to it. There's duality in everything. Electricity, plus minus. Everywhere we look, there's duality. Masculine, feminine, that's the law of gender. We'll get back to that. Nothing can exist without two sides to it. When was the last time you saw a one sided pancake, for instance? You say, oh, that's a silly question. As well, it underscores the point, doesn't it? You can't have one without the other. Out, in, up, down, hot, cold, problem, solution. Not two different things, two sides of the same thing. So, why is this important to us? It's important because you have challenges in your life. You have problems in your life. I'm sure you have. I know I have. But a brilliant man said to me once, under successful people are not people without problems. They're just people who have learned to solve their problems. How do they do that? They use the law of polarity because they accept the idea that if I consciously hyper focus on the problem, I can also choose to utilize this principle and ask myself, what is it that I'm programmed not to see? What is the opposite side of this? The more I hold my attention and awareness there, the more solutions are going to start popping into my mind. And I realized it was never a resource problem. It was a polarity problem. It was a perception problem. So you can say polarity is also closely linked to the mental tool called perception. Perception is your ability to change your viewpoint on any situation. That's based on the law of polarity. So the next time you have a problem, be grateful for it. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm being invited to utilize my mental tools. I'm being invited onto a higher level of thinking. Like Einstein said, the old level of thinking that created the problem will never be the level of thinking that you use to solve the problem. You have to elevate your thinking, elevate your consciousness, turn on more light. Darkness disappears in the presence of light. So what does the light represent? It represents awareness. Now you're disconnecting from the physical. You're not letting it control you anymore. You control it. A great question you can ask yourself going forward: what is the illusion here? What is it that I'm programmed not to see? And I guarantee you solutions will start to come into view. It's not a money problem, it's a mindset problem. It's a perception problem. It's not a resource problem, it's a perception and a mindset problem. It's it always comes back to the same thing. It comes back to the law and your ability, or should I say inability, to work with the law. That's it. That's it. What? Yes, that's it. And if you have had money problems for the last 10 years, you have to start taking a different look and a different approach and ask yourself, what is it that I've co-created? Because I am the creator. I have subjectively let my ignorance run my life, and I'm going to make a conscious decision now to stop it and start studying this. If you're somebody that's been dealing with physical ailments for years and years and years, you have to stop up and ask yourself, what are you impressing upon your subjective mind? Because I'm a firm believer, after having helped over 10,000 people improve the quality of their lives, I'm a firm believer that 60 to 70% of physical ailments starts and stops in the mind. But it's oftentimes a wrongful perception that creates the problem. It's never about the problem, it's about the perception of the situation. That's it. How would Elon Musk look at this problem? Would he think that it's a money problem? He probably would not. You can start bringing people into your own consciousness and ask yourself, how would that person look at this? How would Anders look at this? How would Bob Proctor look at this? You know, I know, it's so interesting. I thought for years, if I just learned to earn more money, all problems went away. Well, I have news for you. They didn't. They became magnified. 10 times as much income, 10 times as many problems. People that earn more money, they have money problems too. They're just a different kind of money problems. All right? So it's not about the problem. It's about your perception of the situation. And the more you work with your perception, the more the situation changes and the more you find solutions. And where were the solutions? They were always here. You just called them into your consciousness now because you brought the law into your life. And if I can hyper focus on the issue and the problem, guess what? Ding, 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 ding. Yes, we have a winner. You can focus on the solution. But it takes mental effort. It takes mental discipline. It's a transmutation of mental energy, not physical. Next one, let's move on and talk about the principle of rhythm. Rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates, the Kabbalion. Rhythm compensates. There's a rhythm in everything, in nature, in the stock market, in us, everywhere. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion to and from, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum like movement, a tide like ebb and flow, high tide and low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with this principle of polarity described a moment ago. Yeah, so there's your law of polarity again. They all fit together like colors of a rainbow. So, why is the law of rhythm important? There is a rhythm, like I said, in you and in me. There was a couple of German scientists back in the 50s that came up with a concept called biorhythms. And they postulated that we have mental biorhythms, emotional biorhythms, physical biorhythms. That means some days you're going to feel not as great, some days you will feel better, some days you'll feel, some days you're going to feel really sharp. The principle here is key because it's about not hitting the extremes anymore. It's about evening out the waves. I asked Bob Proctor once, do you ever get really excited? And he goes, no. I said, what? He goes, if I got really excited, it also followed I would get really depressed. These are just two sides of the same thing. I'm like, I see. So what do you do then? He said, I stay as much as I can in a state of grateful anticipation. If I lose, it doesn't affect me. If I win, I don't let me get myself excited. I just treat them as markers on the way to my goal. So how can this principle serve us? Well, we know that after a downswing comes an upswing. What happens in the stock market when it dips, when it falls? The Great Depression, many times throughout our history, there's been the stock market crash. What do people do? They freak out and they start selling, right? What are the old seasoned experts, Warren Buffett and all these other guys? What do? They start buying, don't they? Yeah, because they know there's an upswing coming. Well, most people don't live like that. They don't live with an anticipation of an upswing when they're in a downswing. They start feeling sorry for themselves. They dig their hole a little deeper, you know? I had a mentor saying once to me, Anders, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Like that's the first step. Stop digging, start finding a grateful expectation that there's an upswing coming. It must. Not some days, not if and when and but, it must. The question is just when. And the more you prepare mentally, because you can, I don't care how bad things are on a physical plane. I don't care how much the body complains to you and in various ways. You can prepare for that upswing mentally. You can completely disassociate yourself from the physical and feel so grateful for the upswing that's on its way. You can. Well, I can't because, well, that's an excuse, and everything that follows because is a coincidence. It's a symptom that you're stuck in mentally. You can prepare for the upswing. That's the law of rhythm. Rhythm compensates, like it's said in the Kabbalion. Rhythm compensates. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. So that also means we shouldn't get really excited when things go well, because that means you get really depressed and sad when things go wrong. Then you still let your mind be governed by something outside of yourself. And that doesn't mean you're not grateful. I'm very grateful for everything in my life, always. And I'm also grateful. I was grateful for the time when somebody conned me and cheated me out of $1 million. I made a wrong investment. I shouldn't have done it. It was a stupid mistake. And for an hour, I blamed myself. For an hour, I felt really bad about it. But you know what? I started preparing for the upswing. I learned something, and that's it. I felt grateful for the learning. And so somebody said, well, shouldn't you sue them? Shouldn't you this and that? If I did that, that would cause me to stay in a very negative vibration for a very long time, and that's not going to serve me. So why would I do that to myself? It doesn't matter what happens. It just is. The more grateful you can be right now for the upswing that's coming, the better off you'll be. Because then you will disassociate from the situation and your ruling mental state. The biggest wins I've had over the last few years, it just is. And people don't, well, aren't you happy? Aren't you really excited? Not really. I'm grateful, tremendously grateful, but it doesn't, no, I'm onwards to the next. So the next one is interesting. And this is the one I want to hone in on. In your life and in your business, this is so big. It is so simple. And it's easy to understand, but most people miss it. They really do. It's so obvious they miss it. Look at their results. They say intellectually, I understand this, but you look at their behavior, and their behavior clearly indicates they've not understood this at all. And the principle is cause and effect. Now, this is a big one. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. Ooh, that's good. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. Luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity. There is no such thing as luck. It's law. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. You want more. I know you do. You want more in your life. You want more in your business, at your job. There is an invisible cause behind the expressed effect that you experience. And if you take care of the main cause, the effect will take care of itself. So, in other words, you set your goal and then you forget about it. Then you start focusing on the cause behind that goal. So, it might be a health goal, and you may want to release weight. Then you want to focus on your mental discipline. That's the main cause behind the expressed effect. You might want more income in your business, more revenue in the business. Well, what do most people focus on? I need more money. That's silly. They try and cut corners and trade their way to more. What they really should be doing is understanding that when you take care of the cause, the effect will take care of itself. What is the main cause behind growth in business and in life? It's service to your fellow human beings. I know I put a lot of great service out. This is completely free. You can share it with the world, and you can take it and apply it. And I know the more you apply it, the better your results will become. Yesterday, I spoke with a new participant of ours. Her name is Yanni, and her son Lucas, 17 years old. He has been listening to our meditations on YouTube for over a year, and and it changed his life. It's really helped him a lot in his school and in his life. And as a consequence of Lucas changing his life, his mom starts following along, and she's followed us for about a year. And she's just started one of our programs yesterday. And I know that this material serves a lot of people over a long period of time. Some become clients and some don't. But regardless, I know the main cause is service, and I know we're putting a lot out of it. We do free challenges every now and then. We have, oh, by the way, we have a free quiz you can do, because the truth is, like I said before, you have mental illusions blocking you from expressing the law more perfectly in your life. So you know what you should be doing, but there's mental blocks that subjectively block you from executing on it. So I put together a quiz that identifies 5 of the biggest mental illusions, mental blocks that prevents most people from getting ahead. And so you can actually access it totally free. It's in the description here in the video. And you can do the quiz in Danish, or you can do it in English. And it will reveal to you the biggest mental illusion that is holding you back from living more of this, from expressing more perfection in your life and better results. And it will show you what to do to overcome it. All right? Side note. But the truth is, we invest a lot of resources in putting out a lot of good. There's no expectation about the effect. I know the effect will take care of itself. And many business owners, they focus on this. I need clients. No, what you need is understanding that everything comes into your life and in your business by law. What you really need to do is amp up your service. It's so basic, it's so simple, and most business owners miss it. They're in that need frequency. I need. They focus on this. They're ignorant. They just don't know. They don't know that. And the worst thing is they don't know they don't know. So they're ignorant incompetence. Let's make sure we become at least conscious incompetence. We know that we're incompetent because we haven't applied this. You can get to a point where you're unconscious competence again, to a point where you just apply it without any conscious thought. So make sure you focus on the cause regardless. Make sure you backtrack and look at what is the effect you'd like to achieve and what is the main cause behind it. Then everything is going to start to shift for you. We could spend, in fact, in one of our programs, we spent an entire month on the concept of universal law. So there's no end to it. And the people that think they know it, it's so interesting to me. The people that think they know, you look at their results and they're mediocre. Their egos, they have their heads up in their butt. I'm sorry to say, but they think they know. because there's never an end station. There's always more to know. I'm I'm humble enough to understand that the more I understand, the more I don't understand. I'm a student for life, and I will be until I am departing this physical plane again. And so never fall prey to the idea that you think you've gotten it. Nobody's gotten it. We just get it a little bit better every day. That's it. And the people that say, this is the only way, run for the hills, find the emergency exit, don't work with them. They're so stuck with their egos up their butt that they think that their way is the way. No, 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 no. If you don't teach essence, universal law, combined with mindset and skill set and tool set, it's pointless in my opinion. But there's no one way. Only God knows that there's a million ways to achieve a certain outcome. But I know some ways because I've done some ways, and the ways I've done worked because that's evident by my results. But I'm not saying my way is the only way. The last law here we're going to talk about is the principle of gender, the law of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. That's so true. And for anything to be created in your life, the feminine and masculine has to be there. On a physical level, we talk about it as interaction between physical. There's a female body and a male body, and when they come together and have fun, they produce another baby, and that's gender too. But this is also an energetic thing. You can look at it in the realm of the mind. Neville Goddard, in his beautiful book, Feeling is the Secret, pointed this out. There's a masculine and a feminine part to the mind, and both parts of the mind have to be present for the goal to become visible on the physical plane. So we have gender, and he called the conscious mind the masculine dominant mind, the subjective, the emotional or receptive mind. And both has to be in play for something to become anything. But it's the same in life. You have a masculine tendency, and this is not about gender. I mean, the law is called the law of gender, but it's not as much about masculine and feminine gender as it is about energy. You can be in a female body and have a very masculine energy around you. You can be in a male body and have a very female energy. We all have both. Some have a little more than others, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum. But you have to have an intuitive, receptive approach where you allow, but you also have to have a linear, dominant thinking, projecting part to your approach for anything to become anything. Too much of either or is not constructive. It's about a balance between the two. So you want to learn to bring yourself in a receptive state. You want to learn how to bring yourself in a creative, driven state. This principle, when you see it in nature, it has everything to do with when your goal is being manifest on a physical plane. So we say, I want the goal to be here by that date, but we guess on the date. Ultimately, the law of gender decides when it will happen. But interestingly enough, we tend to produce on the physical plane in accordance with the time we give ourselves. Bob's mentor, Leland Van Vanderwall, said it beautifully. The universe awaits direction from the soul. You're the soul. You create the direction, and you bring yourself in a receptive state. And between the creative and the receptive is when things are being born. So desire on a subjective level is a triggering mechanism for the birth of your idea. Desire in Latin means giving birth to the children. And so the law of gender decrees that masculine energy and feminine energy have to be in play to give birth to the children. And it springs out of your desire for more. When you desire something, it changes your energy state. It changes the main cause behind the expressed effect. It changes, and then you see how all these principles start working in conjunction with each other to produce on the physical plane what you want more of. All right. So when you apply these laws, and I really hope you do, make a conscious decision today to take one of them and just apply them. Just take one that you believe will benefit you the most and apply it. Use your intuition to guide you. Don't let yourself get hung up in the analysis paralysis state. Intuitively, Could I benefit from being in a more constructive vibration? Could I benefit by focusing on the upswing that's on its way? Could I focus on being in a grateful state that is in harmony with my goals so that on a physical, I'll attract more of what I want? You know the answer. When you apply these slowly but surely, when I started this, I was broke because I was focused on getting. I became rich when I focused my energy on giving. Like, you turn it on its head. You are literally programmed to work against these laws. When you flip them upside down, focus on the cause, the effect will take care of itself. I started applying mental discipline. My body became healthier. I started giving out more valuable service to the world without any expectation of what came back. I started winning financially. And my friendships, my relationships, everything changed because I started focusing on being something different in the world, as opposed to expecting something outside of me to change before I changed. You change and you bring your life in harmony with these laws, and everything shifts. And you can have a good intention about it. Intent and execution are two different things. Make an irrevocable decision that this I'm doing. Come hell or high water, I'm doing this every day. Thank you so much for watching this video. I have linked to a couple more right here that I think you would like. Now, until next time, it's not who you are that holds you back, it's all the illusions of who you think you're not. This is Anders Hansen. Thank you.